Chabad center, to their community, and each one has its own beauty and its own strength. And I know for myself personally, living here for almost 11 years now, I've kind of watched myself and the way I interact and connect with the truly exquisite and precious souls that comprise our community and that I have the privilege of interacting with on a daily basis. And I've come to know that my style of connection has been through authentic and vulnerable sharing. And it's hard to open up at first, but it leads to such powerful connections. And I, as a Rebbetzin, have seen how much I've grown in the process, how I've grown as much, if not more, from the community members that I have the good fortune of leading through these powerful connections. So connection through vulnerability definitely is an idea that resonates deeply within me. And watching this interview that Chabad.org did with you, I was blown away by the way you take this idea to a whole new level. I cannot even begin to imagine, Chavi, the bravery, the courage that it took to open up and share your life story of struggle, the faith, of love, everything that you went through, especially as a Rebbetzin, and especially in light of the fact that your story did, in certain ways, break certain conventional or social norms within the religious world. But your sharing has not only connected you to your community in Montana, but your story has become world renowned, and thousands worldwide as a result have connected deeply with you. And you have helped so many of us deepen our faith and our belief in God in the process. So it's really an honor, such a treat to have you with us, Chavi. For those of you that missed Chavi's bio, just in short, Rebbetzin Chavi Bruk is the co-director of Chabad Lubavitch of Montana, director of Bozeman's Mikvah Mei Menachem, Camp Gan Israel, Women's League of Chabad, and the newly launched Holocaust Museum of Montana. Along with her husband, Rabbi Chaim, they've adopted 5 children, and they enjoy living in the mountains where they've created a renaissance of Jewish life, bringing a piece of heaven to the souls of Big Sky Country. Sharing her own life story of challenge and triumph, tears and joy, Chavi's here tonight to inspire us with a Jewish perspective to carry us through the testy moments of life. We'll conclude tonight's program with a question and answer session. So feel free, please, to type in any questions you may have for Chavi in the chat box. And at the end of tonight's program, we'll have Rebbetzin Bracha Wolshansky address those questions to Chavi. And I really hope, friends, that as you hear Chavi open up, again, with such authenticity and vulnerability, I hope that in turn you'll feel comfortable to open up with your questions. This is your opportunity. Type them in the chat box and they'll be addressed to Chavi at the end of tonight's program. All right, Chavi, I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you so much. I'm humbled by that beautiful introduction. I hope I can earn it. But thank you so much for having me. And your Rebbetzin is 100% correct with the fact that when we can open up and when we can be vulnerable, the only byproduct of that is deeper connection. So I hope that you enjoy. And like we said, please, at the end, feel free to ask any questions that you might have. One night, I dreamed a dream. As I was walking along the beach with God, across the dark sky flashed scenes from my life. For each scene I noticed 2 sets of footprints in the sand, one belonging to me and one to my God. After the last scene of my life flashed before me, I looked back at the footprints in the sand and I noticed that at many times along the path of my life, especially at the very lowest and saddest times, there was only one set of footprints. I don't understand why. When I need you the most, you would leave me. He whispered, my precious child, I love you and I will never leave you. Never, even during your trials and tests, when you saw only one set of footprints, it was then that I carried you. And this powerful poem has expressed for many our internal challenge we experience in our relationship with God. And it is with this that I begin my remarks this evening. My husband often walks around the house humming an old Yiddish melody, a tata bistu, with words in Yiddish that were composed in the 80s, and the song loosely translates as, Hashem, you are a trustworthy Father, your love for us is unimaginable. Furthermore, says the Holy Baal Shem Tov, every Jew is like Hashem's only child. So does God care about me or not? Does he really hear our cries? Has he lost interest in us? I think it's safe to say that people of all religious backgrounds, including Judaism, have often been chastised for asking questions about their relationship with God. Where do I fit him into my life when all is chaotic? Does he even still remember who I am? And if yes, why doesn't he answer my prayers? Tonight, I will address our spiritual schizophrenia and my recurring life theme, riding life's roller coasters, how to hang on, stay strong, and enjoy the ride. So I'm really not your average public speaker. I never took classes. I never ever dreamed of doing this as a child. On the contrary, I'm actually on the quiet side, and my husband's the family talker. But I share my personal story, our family journey with you, as it is my sincere hope that it will shed light on the struggles all of us face, and perhaps bring a new perspective on how to cope in our moments of uncertainty. I've been married for over 14 years. I'm a mother of 5, the oldest of 9, an emissary of Lubavitcher Rebbe of blessed memory to bring authentic Judaism to Montana's big sky. But I'd like to take you back for just a moment and ask you to join me in traveling to Kern Heights, the Chabad Hasidic Haven in Brooklyn, New York. Rabbi Chaim and Rivki Block, my beloved parents, were married in 1983. They gave birth to me, their first child, July 25th, 1984. And when I was 6 months old, the Rebbe entrusted my parents to represent him in the greater San Antonio community, where they've now served and created a renaissance of Jewish life since 1985. I attended Gangani, the preschool my parents founded, and for elementary school, my siblings and I enjoyed studying in our local Jewish day school. And later for high school, I left San Antonio and joined an incredible Chabad high school in the windy city of Chicago. Post-high school studies, I went to Israel and attended Beth Hana Institute of Higher Education in Sfat in northern Israel. On New Year's Day of 2006, I was introduced through a mutual friend to a charismatic, funny, and wise yeshiva student from Brooklyn. His name was Chaim Bruk, and he hailed from a wonderful Chabad family, where he was raised with his 4 siblings. 3 months later, on March 22nd, 2006, just a few miles from the Riverwalk and the Alamo, Chaim and I were married under the Texas sky. Like all our peers, the next thing on our agenda was to begin building our very own family. And of course, I was the oldest, so my parents were really excited to welcome what would be their first grandchild. Our first year in New York was lots of fun. We enjoyed New York's kosher restaurants, spending time with Chaim's family. We traveled all over the place. And we started planning for what would come next, and in our case, the launching of a new frontier of Chabad, bringing the Rebbe's lifelong dream of inspiring, encouraging mitzvah observance, and uplifting our people in the Wild West. 1 year later, on March of 2007, on the morning after our first anniversary, Chaim and I boarded a flight from Newark to Minneapolis and on to Bozeman, Montana. With my in-laws and a few relatives and a couple of Chaim's friends waving from across a TSA checkpoint, we said goodbye to life as we knew it and embarked on our life's mission to the beautiful Jews of Montana, a place that had no traditional Judaism for over 150 years. So yes, as a couple, we were slightly anxious, uncertain about how everything would turn out, but we still held on to the hope that sooner or later we would be blessed with children. Our new Chabad Center was off to a great start as we made remarkable inroads in the community. Jews of all flavors were joining our Shabbat dinners, holiday celebrations, and even Torah classes. They joined either because they were thirsting for something new and traditional, or because they found it quite amusing that a young Orthodox couple would move to Bozeman. They wanted to check it out for themselves. Yet behind the smiles and warmth, behind the day-to-day operations, behind those solidly shut doors, Chaim and I were beginning to worry. What's with those babies we wanted so much? Why am I not pregnant yet? Is it me? Is it him? Is it both of us? What should we do? And how many more times should I buy pregnancy tests just to be heartbroken? Bozeman is like heaven on earth. It's picturesque with the most amazing quality of life, but without precious children on our laps, who would we enjoy it with? We couldn't even find a fertility specialist in our state, so for diagnosis and medical evaluation, we needed to travel. With the help of the amazing people at Bonei Olam, an organization devoted to Jewish couples struggling with infertility, we were introduced to the finest doctors in the field. And in the spring of 2008, 2 years after our marriage, after undergoing an invasive medical procedure in New York, the doctor said to us, and I quote, "You are not going to have biological children. There is nothing else to do."
Oh.
It was devastating. It was heartbreaking, and we felt truly hopeless. I was 23, my husband was 26, and no kids? What was God thinking? And why us? And how could life continue? Can our marriage prosper under this harsh reality? We were young and ambitious and in love, but this had the potential to destroy it all. And we felt like spiritual schizophrenics. One day we were fully on board with total faith in God, and other days we questioned everything. We'd read incredible stories about the power of going to the mikveh, of observing the precious laws of family purity, and the blessings it is to bestow upon all couples, especially those struggling with infertility. Yet me and my husband, a couple who drive 7 hours each way every month, and at times through treacherous winter storms, to use a mikveh in Salt Lake City, Utah, we were told no children? Where's the blessing? Where's the justice? I tried to find comfort in the fact that the Lubavitcher Rebbe and his Rebbetzin, my cherished guides and role models, didn't merit biological children of their own. And in fact, our patriarchs and matriarchs, Abraham and Sarah, Isaac and Rebekah, Jacob and Rachel struggled with infertility. It was a weak comfort, and it didn't give us any long-term solace. We were distraught. Yet during the despair, in those untenable moments of sorrow, what Chaim and I discovered together is that there are moments in life that we merit seeing God, and others we can't see him, but we rely on our faith in him. Montana is beautiful, 24/7, 365 days a year. You should all come and visit when traveling is a little bit easier. You can see the miracles of nature for yourself. And the Talmud teaches us that when one gazes at nature, seeing the miracles of creation, when we see the miracle of medicine, which has come so far to help those in need of healing, or even watching a flower bud in your front yard, this is a clear sighting of God. Stand at Niagara Falls, or at our very own Old Faithful in Yellowstone, gaze at the glaciers in Banff, deep in the Canadian Rockies, or the awesomeness of the Grand Canyon. At those moments, one doesn't need to believe in God. At those moments, God is right before your eyes. When we see God, when he's visibly apparent to us, it would be a crime to believe in him, as we're denying his very presence before us. It's when one is experiencing a permanent infertility diagnosis, when one's walking through a pediatric cancer ward, or when looking at the casualties of COVID-19, which has changed our lives in so many ways. So many of us found ourselves confused, feeling hopeless, and even depressed on occasion. It is then we need to pull out something deeper, something essential. Pull out our faith card, as it is with that unshakable faith that will allow us to survive and perhaps even thrive. It is faith that will shine light in a very dark tunnel. So when we'd hear trigger words like, oh, we're expecting in November, or do you have children yet? Or I'm sure it will happen in the right time, it would awaken such raw emotion for us. And not only for us, for the countless souls and beautiful couples and individuals who are struggling, feeling alone and sad. It was in these moments of near anger or hopelessness that we keep on turning to each other and say, we've got to pull out the faith card again. We have no choice. So going back to our story, at the Kinnes HaShluchim, the annual Chabad Rabbis Conference in the fall of 2008, while sitting in a Brooklyn shul, Chaim ran into his old friend, Yossi from Moscow, Russia. For the first time ever, he opened up about our awful situation. His friend, visibly shocked, was comforting, but like most, wasn't sure exactly what to say. And before they parted ways, my husband asked him matter-of-factly to please think about us if any baby in need of adoption ever comes your way. That night, Chaim attended an evening for the rabbis where they showed an unpublicized video in which the Rebbe encourages 2 women to adopt babies. He called me immediately, sharing with me the amazing, undeniable divine providence. This year, when we're so lost, searching for a glimmer of light and hope, we merit to see this video, and we knew that adoption was meant for us. The months dragged on. We looked into adoptions in Israel, Ukraine, the US. Nothing really panned out. We tried to learn from the experts in the field of all the intricacies involved in the process. It was pretty overwhelming. The legalities and costs seemed unfeasible. We learned what the possibilities are and aren't, and we were pretty lost and confused. On August 28, 2009, a little baby girl was born in a slum hospital outside of Moscow. A young mother gave birth to her child 7.5 months into her unexpected pregnancy. The baby weighed about 3 pounds and was not in good health, to say the least. Mom was scared and shocked. Her baby was hospitalized for over a month, hooked to a respirator, and underwent several surgeries. This fighting baby miraculously managed to survive the Russian medical care. She still had a long road to full recovery, and the doctors encouraged her to take her to America for a medical evaluation. The woman called Chaim's friend in Moscow for guidance, that same friend that he spoke to almost a year before. And as loving souls, Yossi and his amazing wife Luba cared for this mother and her baby, and when the mom finally listened to the doctors and took her baby for medical evaluation in the States, they traveled with her, leaving behind their entire family. During the long flight over and later while visiting the doctors, this young mom decided that she wants to give her baby to an adoptive family. They worked with her, spoke with her about the ramifications of her decision, but she was adamant to have her baby adopted. At that point, Chaim's friend called and said, "Chaim, remember that conversation you had with me last year? Are you still interested in adoption?" And after overcoming immense challenges, and finally on the brightest Tuesday morning of our lives, November 10th, just about 11 years ago, we got the call that was almost 4 years in the making. It was like getting a call directly from God. It was an adoption agency. Rabbi Bruk, you and your wife can come now and get your beautiful baby. And we sure did. It was that beautiful morning that Chaya made me a mommy and Chaim an Abba. The gift of adoption is something most people can't relate to. It's an experience like no other. And while Chaim and I don't know what it's like to have a biological child, we do know how amazing it is to have an adoptive child. And it was on that Tuesday morning that it became crystal clear to me, to us, that God is with us, guiding us, loving us, and running the entire show. So when it rains, it pours, and just a few months after Chai's adoption, Chaim received a call from a rabbi in Hoboken, New Jersey, about another potential adoption. So on Shmini Atzeret, the last days of Sukkot, less than 1 year after Chaya came into our lives, our second daughter, Zisi, was born. Zisi was also born a few weeks early, about 3 weeks, and we were in Texas celebrating the holiday when we got a fax. Remember those? They used to exist. And it said, "It's a girl." As it was a 3-day holiday, the anxiety was palpitating, and it was Chaim's younger sister and brother who actually picked Zisi up immediately after the holiday, and we met Zisi for the very first time the next morning at Enterprise Rent-A-Car in Newark Airport. How many parents can say that they meet their baby for the first time in Newark Airport? I think that's pretty unique. When my mother-in-law, Chanchi, asked my husband, "Why the rush to adopt a second child so soon?" my husband responded, "Ma, I thought you taught me that we don't believe in family planning." She laughed and she never asked again. So in September of 2010, when we adopted Zisi, our second child, all seemed well enough. She and Chaya, our oldest at the time, had lots of fun playing together. They cracked each other up in their adjacent cribs. We read books together. We had swimming lessons. We frolicked in the outdoors, as is the hallmark of Big Sky Country. But one Sunday morning in the fall of 2011, just after Zisi's first birthday, everything changed. Zisi was sitting in her high chair. Chaim was feeding her breakfast, and she was jolly as usual, when suddenly her head dropped and she started experiencing what seemed like an epileptic seizure. My husband screamed on the top of his very loud lungs, and I came from upstairs in pajamas, holding Zisi tight, and with her 2-year-old Chaya in the back seat, my husband drove like a New York maniac and got us to the ER in Bozeman within 6 minutes of her seizure. While I held Zisi for the initial intervention and attempted diagnosis, my husband immediately called our local team of medical friends, which included our local Jewish OBGYN, who's a dear member of our shul, and Zisi's angel-like pediatrician who knew our kids from the moment they were adopted. The ER doctor started blood work and x-rays and MRIs and all the routine tests you do for a kid who had some type of neurological episode. We eagerly awaited the results, which all came back inconclusive. Zisi's young and precious brain didn't show any of the expected abnormalities associated with epilepsy, so they shrugged it off by saying, "Sometimes kids get seizures and they don't come back." But time passed, and it was evident to both me and my husband that something wasn't right. Zisi was slow with her expected milestones, walking, talking, potty training, all slower than usual. So we schlepped to Billings, our big city, to see a visiting neurologist, and he too was adamant that Zisi's developmental delays were all behavioral, not neurological, and that the seizures and her slow development were totally unrelated. But we didn't buy it. And you may ask why? Why not just let her progress at her own pace and let it go? Here's why. Every day or two, Zisi would have a total meltdown, not the conventional tantrums that all kids have. These would last about an hour and a half. She would black out. She couldn't hear us. She wasn't consolable, and her crying disrupted our entire household. We knew this wasn't behavioral. Something wasn't right, and we were determined to figure it out. Parenting is hard enough. Every self-help book, every parenting magazine, and most importantly, our deep and wise Jewish traditions all give us so much direction on how to raise children, how to speak to them, how to interact with them, how to react to them. But not a lot teaches you what to do with the unknown. How are you to help your beloved child when no expert knows actually what's going on? It was so scary. Should we continue to search for medical answers? Is this genetic? Did her biological parents have this too? Should we fly her out of state for secondary consultation? Will insurance cover it? If not, can we pull the funds together needed for this? A classmate of mine with a special needs child told me of a pediatric neurology center in New Jersey where she had taken her son for an evaluation and who she thought was really good. So in November of 2014, I boarded a flight out of Bozeman with 4-year-old ZC, leaving my husband behind with our other children. The primary neurologist was a remarkable Hungarian doctor who in 2 short days concluded without a shadow of a doubt that ZC isn't sleeping at night, although it may seem like she is. Her brain is unstable, and most importantly, that her meltdown episodes, those crying hours, are actually seizures, which are completely impacting ZC's development. The Talmud teaches that there is no greater joy than the removal of doubt and the advent of clarity. But sometimes clearness is a double-edged sword. So now we know what's going on, sort of, but a new world of challenge was opened at that very moment. So we headed back from New Jersey. I headed back with ZC in a daze. The doctors wanted her to undergo genetic testing to confirm her form of epilepsy. So we had to travel again to Billings, where she underwent a spinal tap and a $22,000 genetic test. And all of this confirmed that ZC has a rare genetic disorder called GLUT1 deficiency. It was crystal clear that this dear soul ZC, the special neshama entrusted to us along with our other children, has a disorder that only 500 people worldwide have been diagnosed with. So what is GLUT1? And I quote, GLUT1 syndrome is a genetic disorder that impairs brain metabolism. Glucose isn't transported properly into the brain, leaving it starving for the energy it needs to grow and function. GLUT1 deficiency causes an array of symptoms. Some may include seizures, movement disorders, speech and language disorders, and developmental delays. There is no cure for GLUT1. The current standard of care is a ketogenic diet, which helps improve most symptoms for most patients by giving the brain an alternate source of energy that helps optimize brain growth and development. So we hear this and we're like, okay, like ZC was already going to speech therapy, occupational therapy, physical therapy. She was already on meds for seizures. So what is this ketogenic diet and what are we up against? Do we really have the strength to deal with this new reality? Do we have what it takes to care for ZC and give her what she needs while giving our other children what they need? Like a camel that can only carry a load that matches its strength, the Talmud teaches that God doesn't give us any more than we can handle. But I wondered, is God placing too much trust in us? I pondered, can I really handle this? How can we parent when all parenting norms are thrown out the window? So this new ketogenic diet is a high-fat, moderate protein, and low-carb diet that causes the body to produce and burn ketones for fuel in the absence of glucose. These ketones can act as an alternative fuel source, and the energy they provide can help alleviate some of the symptoms of GLUT1. In simple English, it's a pain in the you-know-what. ZC can only eat meals that we prepare and measure, especially for her each week. Only certain ingredients are permitted. Doesn't usually include food that kids normally like. She can never eat out or at anyone else's home, and when we travel, which we do often, we have to bring all her food along. My husband and I travel with her every couple of months to Colorado Children's Hospital, where they monitor her progress with lots of blood work, psychoanalysis, and testing galore. So how does one cope when your little cute, cuddly toddler is struggling with her health and creating such a burden on the family? The answer is parenting with God. I wouldn't be able to get through these moments if I didn't recognize that ZC is a gift from God, as each child is. I wouldn't be able to get through the day if I didn't believe that each of my children were meant for me, and I'm 100% capable of giving them everything they need. The good news is that ZC's diet is working well, And while she has a lifelong of challenges ahead of her, she's developing beautifully as she plays catch up for all the years she wasn't energized properly. So these two kiddos were just a year apart and were a lot to manage, but my dream of having a home full of kids never ceased. In the world of adoption, like in most things in life, you can want all you want, but it doesn't mean it will happen on your timeline. And then it happened. It was the morning after Simchat Torah of 2012, when Chaya was 3 and Zisi was 2. My husband received a call from another friend of his and asked if we were looking to adopt another child. And if yes, would we be open to a Black or, to be more exact, a biracial child? My husband and I deliberated and discussed the ins and outs of raising a Black Orthodox child in Montana, no less, and decided we were all in. So in April of 2013, just after Passover, we adopted our third child, Menny. Menny's adorable. He's pretty wild. He's hard to keep up with, and he cracks us up all the time. He's also started asking questions about his race. When he was 4, he told my husband he wants to be white. During the conversation, my husband took out his phone and started to show him pictures of some famous Black people. His response was priceless. To the picture of President Obama, he said, "He's not Black." But to the picture of Oprah, he said, "She's Black." I don't know. Go figure. It's the funny observations out of a mouth of a now 7-year-old that keeps us smiling. But more recently, as he gets older, the questions get more serious. And he asked us at the dinner table about 6 months ago, he asked us, are there still people in this world who don't like Black people? And it forces us to chat about the tough subjects and realities of life in a productive and healthy way. And it's uniquely interesting because while most Jews aren't racist, many aren't used to seeing Black-looking Chabadniks in shul. It is different, but different shouldn't scare us. It should be an opportunity to be more embracing, more compassionate, and more open-minded. A few years back, while our daughter Chaya was taking a bath on Martin Luther King Day, she spoke about what she had learned in school. And she then said, "Mom, I'm so grateful for Martin Luther King." So I said, "Okay, tell me why." And she said, "If Martin Luther King didn't have a dream, Menny wouldn't be able to be my brother." It's a word-for-word quote. Raising a Black child, especially with today's tense race relations in the United States, could be a tough balancing act. Menny knows bits and pieces about what's going on, and he's very perceptive. So we explain to him as best as we can to a 7-year-old that sadly, racism still exists, and racism still exists in some circles, and it's terrible. And at the same time, remind him that he's adopted by white parents, and the fact that he goes to a mostly white school where he's treated like a superstar, and the fact that we've had a Black president for 8 years are all positive signs of the progress that has been made. Yet, we are also very careful not to dictate for him what the Black experience should look like, as we aren't Black, and we don't know what it's like to be seen that way. It's a part of who he is that I hope he cherishes and is able to embrace as he gets older and figure out exactly how to relate to it in a way that suits him best. In August of 2016, a lovely 12-year-old girl, Courtney, joined our Ghanizzi summer camp. Her mom died tragically when she was only 5 years old, and her dad, who did love her, just couldn't raise her with the stability that each child deserves. After spending 2 weeks in our home and loving her time with our family, she didn't want to leave. She did head back to Wyoming, but in her mind, Bozeman is where she wanted to stay. Chaim and I had adopted 3 babies before, but Courtney, a preteen, unlike babies, they come with a long history of baggage that affects their everyday, their every thought, their every emotion. And Courtney was placed by God at our doorstep, and we needed to answer God's call. I know God would have understood if he would have said, "Sorry, we just can't. We're not cut out for this." But we knew it was our calling, and we said yes. Courtney's child number 4. She's an amazing, talented, smart, and fun young woman, and she will undoubtedly grow to boundless heights. Does that mean she's always easy? Not in the slightest. Does she have a lot to repair internally? She'd be the first to say so. But does she have a glowing soul that's in love with Judaism? And is she a remarkable older sister to Chaya, Zisi, and Menny? You bet. She chose her own Jewish name, Shoshana Yael, as she felt like she's a Shoshana, a rose, plucked from amongst the thorns. And like Yael in the book of Judges, she's a warrior fighting for a better life for herself. When adopting Shoshana, it was odd for Chaya. She was not the oldest anymore, and yet she's still our first child. These issues are addressed and talked about and add to the novelty of our family that we've allowed Hashem to create for us. So Shoshana had a lot more to sift through than we ever imagined, but her journey has changed us for the better. From her adoption in 2016 to the school year of 2018, Shoshana attended our local public school while supplementing her Jewish studies with her daily online tutor. Keeping her close to her new family was the right thing to do and gave her time to blend in with her new parents and siblings. In September of 2018, the beginning of the new school year and her high school year, with the support of her unbelievable therapist, we sent Shoshana off to a conventional Chabad high school in Florida. But after a few months, it became clear that her unhealthy behavior patterns were a reflection of undeniable deeper wounds that would have been an immense burden on an adult, how much more so on a young growing soul. So with the guidance of friends and mentors in March of 2019, we did something radical. We sent Shoshana to a wilderness therapy program in southern Utah, where for 4 months, she lived with 7 other girls and a few staff in the desert of Utah. No bathrooms, no kitchen, no technology, no clocks, no cabins, no tents, no showers, all natural. You go to sleep when the sun sets, you wake up when the sun rises, you hike 9 to 12 miles each day, and just enjoy the nature that you're in. It was a nurturing environment, but one that forced Shoshana and the other girls in the encampment to look inwards and deal with their raw self and be able to share that with their peers. It was phenomenal. Initially, she was furious, of course, but today she will tell you that although not an easy experience, the time in the wilderness gave her foundational tools that could be used to change the trajectory of her life. After graduating from Wilderness on July 1st, we transferred her to a girls' therapeutic academy where the focus is equine therapy, working with horses, who, like the girls, experience trauma. Together, the girls and their horses work through their trauma and grow in that healing process. Shoshana's horse's name is Roman, and they're a great pair. Chaim and I don't know how this story will end for Shoshana or any of our kids for that matter, but I do know that we are giving her the best possible tools for her progress and success into the future. If these 4 didn't keep us busy enough, 2.5 years ago, Chaim got a call from a Jewish woman in Montana. And yes, you guessed it, on August 18th, 2017, we adopted our beloved Chanaleah, named for Chaim's mom, who passed away at the young age of 54 back in 2010. So when I wake up to my children each morning, I pause, and I remember how blessed I am. And I remember that we can't decide what life will bring us. We can only decide how we will respond to what's sent our way. It may be hard to recognize that we don't control our children's outcomes, but it's also really liberating. We are meant to do the work, persevere through the tiring days and sleepless nights, and after all of that, live life without any expectations for particular results, to cherish the work and the growth and the progress, and our progress within ourselves and our children, and in those moments, not allow for the purity to be tainted by our own agendas. Don't misunderstand me. There are enormous hardships we experience every day. Each child has their personal needs, and navigating the process of figuring out what each one needs and what is best suited for them is a full-time job. Do they need attachment therapy or behavioral therapy? Do they need a specialized school or just personal special assistance within a regular school? Do they need a psychologist or psychiatrist? All of this is extremely stressful. And all of these unique needs are in addition to the constant stress of operating a Chabad center in a place with a small populace of Jews, which makes getting a minyan, paying the bills, and giving our children a Jewish education really hard. But again, it's not about what Hashem places before us, but rather how we're going to respond to it. God is not my personal ATM machine who just unloads cash to me just because I punched in what I think are the right numbers. Not that God can't. Of course he can. But he doesn't want us to be spiritual, physical, or material freeloaders. He wants us to do the heavy lifting, as it makes us better people, better parents, better spouses, and he will give us what we need when we need it. I get it, but when some parents or individuals who struggle or see their children suffer in any way can turn their back on God, trust me, I get it. It hurts so much that they don't think there's another option. I really don't judge them. I just disagree because it's with God's love, God's care, God's Torah guidance, and how to see each day and each child as a gift that I'm able to fight on to give all my children I hope, a great life. They might argue with me. But it's even more than faith, it's trust. Trust is a potent formula. When we ask for God's blessings for good and place our total trust in Him, it has the ability, the spiritual power to actually create that reality. Do I ever question God? All the time. So did Abraham and Moses and Isaiah and Jeremiah, King David, and all the other faithful heroes and heroines of Judaism. Only someone that believes in God can question Him. If He doesn't exist and He means nothing to me, I wouldn't bother conversing with Him. Precisely because I love Him, precisely because I'm in awe of Him, because I know He's guided us to our 5 miracles, I wonder why the mystery. Why can't it be a bit more straightforward? My questions and hours of thinking don't take away my faith in Him, it strengthens it. I struggle often. Life is full of struggles. Escaping them is not an option. I tried. It doesn't work. Overcoming them is always possible, be it with a lot of inner courage. And I share this all because all of us encounter challenges in our lives. And I can state unequivocally that God is an operator par excellence, and when we are meant to transition from a place of impossibilities to a place of revealed good, it can happen like a blink of an eye. Don't give up. He will not fail you. And I love this quote from Dr. Seuss. I even have it on a plaque in my house. Life's too short to wake up with regrets. So love the people who treat you right, forgive the ones who don't, and believe that everything happens for a reason. If you get a chance, take it. If it changes your life, let it. Nobody said it would be easy. They just promised it would be worth it. And I want to leave you with one last story. Once upon a time, a daughter complained to her father that her life was miserable and that she didn't know how she was going to make it. She was tired of fighting and struggling all the time, and it seemed like just as one problem was solved, another one soon followed. Her father, a chef, took her to the kitchen. He filled 3 pots with water and placed each on a high fire. Once the 3 pots began to boil, he placed potatoes in one, eggs in the second pot, and ground coffee beans in the third. He then let them sit and boil without saying a word. The daughter moaned and groaned and waited impatiently. And after 20 minutes, he turned off the burners. He took the potatoes out of the pot, placed them in a bowl. He pulled the eggs out, put them in a bowl. He then ladled the coffee out and put it in a cup. Turning to her, he asked, "What do you see?" "Potatoes, eggs, and coffee," she hastily replied. "Look closer," he said. "Touch the potatoes." She did and noted that they were soft. He then asked her to take an egg and break it. After pulling off the shell, she observed the hard-boiled egg. Finally, he asked her to sip the coffee. Its rich aroma brought a smile to her face. "What does this mean?" she asked. He then explained. The potatoes, the eggs, and the coffee beans had each faced the same adversity, the boiling water. However, each one reacted differently. The potatoes went in strong, hard, and unrelenting, but in boiling water, they became soft and weak. The egg was fragile with a thin outer shell protecting its liquid interior until it was put into the boiling water. Then, the inside of the egg became hard. However, the ground coffee beans were unique. After they were exposed to the boiling water, they changed the water and created a delicious beverage. "Which one are you?" he asked his daughter. "When adversity knocks on your door, how do you respond? Are you a potato, an egg, or a coffee bean?" So I conclude with a heartfelt prayer that all those who are experiencing challenges in any part of your life should merit the inner strength to deal with your journey and merit, along with all our people, the coming of Mashiach now. Thank you so much.
Chavi, thank you so much on behalf of the Jewish community here in Raleigh. Sometimes when I get off the phone with a friend or a sister, my husband will say to me, "Was it good? Did you laugh and did you cry?" Like that's the parameter of a good conversation.
Yeah,
if you laughed and you cried. But I feel like not only did we all laugh and cry with you, but we so inspired and just a lot of inspiration to integrate. So we thank you so much for that. My name is Dasi. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Dasi Cutler, sister-in-laws with Chana, who you heard earlier, and I have the honor of working together with Bracha Wilshansky on the Raleigh chapter of the Jewish Women's Circle. It's an honor to partner together with the Jewish Women's Circle of Cary on this. And I wanted to talk about the strong parallel between the narrative in this week's Parsha, which is Parshas Lech Lecha, and Chavi and her husband and her family's incredibly compelling and inspiring story. So the Parsha talks about the very first Jewish couple, Abraham and Sarah. They were instructed by God and sent out to a distant, faraway land to spread awareness of monotheism, which at that point was a foreign concept in the world. And while they went through their own roller coaster ride with many challenges and struggles, which the Torah clearly spells out and elaborates on, including Sarah's infertility struggles, and yet they were able to succeed in their mission and make the world around them a more godly place. Our sages tell us, Ma'aseh Avos Siman Labanim, which means the stories and experiences of our matriarchs and patriarchs are a guide for us to emulate, and that we have the same spiritual DNA as Abraham and Sarah, and in fact, all of our matriarchs and patriarchs. And this is sort of a combination of their spiritual DNA, like the character traits that they pass on to us, like kindness and perseverance and Mesiras Nefesh, self-sacrifice, and also the stories of their life that, serve as a guide. Chavi's story and your family story really brings this to light. She and her husband sent out to the Big Sky country, a place that's not synonymous with Judaism, which was not synonymous with Judaism, to say the least. And with their hard work, love of God, the Torah, love of others, perseverance, they've greatly influenced the Jewish community in their state while building a beautiful Jewish family. Thank you, Chavi, so much for sharing your remarkable story with us. I know I'm still getting chills and goosebumps thinking about your words, and there's so much to, like I said before, process and integrate, and I hope we can all take inspiration from you, your husband, your beautiful children, your family story, and may we merit to see the hand of God in whatever direction life takes us. Mm-hmm. And with that, I'm going to pass it on to Bracha Olshansky.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Nasi, and thank you, Rebbetzin Chavi. Thank you, everyone, for coming. We have a few questions here in the chat. There's a lot of love here for you. Rebbetzin Chavi can read the chat, but I'm just going to point out some questions. If anyone has any questions they'd like to ask, please feel free to type it in the chat box. If you would prefer to raise your hand and we'll call on you, we can do that as well. So I'll start from the top here. Someone here would like to know what a regular day of yours looks like with your beautiful family.
Chaos, complete chaos. Oh gosh, especially during COVID. I mean, goodness gracious me, oh my. I think a regular day looks a lot like a regular day would look if you had 5 kids. But also there are added elements to our children. A lot of them have very high needs, whether it comes because of attachment or trauma in their history or drug exposure or whatever they had during their, the start of their life really contributes to a person's emotional well-being and also physical well-being, like my daughter Zizi. So there's a lot going on. They have a lot of needs. Sometimes my husband and I are look at each other and we're just like, what do we do? We don't sometimes it's just woo. But we take one day at a time. We also really are, one of the things that we work on constantly is our partnership and our marriage, because in order to weather the storm, you have to have a strong foundation. We also have gotten better at communicating when we just need a break. So I'll say I don't got this. If you want your children to be alive at the end of the day, take over, and vice versa. So it's really a lot of learning on how to use the tools that you have, how to manage, and also, I know this is a statement that's going around a lot because of COVID, but it's okay not to be okay, right? Some days are just not okay. And some days are great. And you're like, oh, I got this. And this is amazing. And some days I'm just like, what was God thinking? I can't handle this. I can't do this, So it really just depends on the moment. And also one of the great things is having a lot of humor. Like, you gotta laugh at life, or it's gonna pull you down. So so basically, sometimes we joke that if there was like a camera in our home, there would be a great reality TV show, because it's pretty funny, ridiculous, chaotic, and amazing at the same time. So just picture that.
Okay. I'm sure many of us.
Okay, the question.
Sorry. Yeah, no, I'm sure many of us can relate to that, the chaos and. Okay, the next question is, many of us struggle how to best support a loved one that is in pain. When you received the infertility diagnosis, what kind of support words do you find the most comforting in your time of deep pain?
Okay, this is such a great question. I think I've learned through my journey, because I was put in a position of, being on the receiving end of pity or empathy or pain, and also being open with my story and being hopefully a place that people feel comfortable to share, is that the most important thing that anyone can do is master the art of listening. We all can talk, right? We all can say things, but the question is, how do we listen? And most of the time when someone's going through a really difficult time, they don't want to hear like, oh my gosh, I went through this too, or oh my gosh, like whatever words you have to say. They really, I think most people just want a safe place to say whatever they're going to say without being judged, without advice, without this is what you should do, or I know what I know, or any of that stuff. Is figure out how to listen. And empathetic listening is a true art. It takes a lot of practice, and that's what I encourage. I talk about it a lot on the platforms that I'm on. Is learning how to listen can be the most powerful thing. I've learned it mostly through my children, and understanding that sometimes you want to fix all the problems and you want to control, the good and the good things that happen to them and prevent them. And it doesn't work. And when they come to you with a challenge or a hardship, how are you going to show up for them? And you want to be able to show up that they feel safe to be able to share with you no matter what they're going to say. You got to be able to handle it, right? So I think that goes to the same for if you have a friend or a family member that's struggling. Show up. Just say, I'm here for you. I'm here to listen. I can't solve, I'm just going to be here and be that safe place where you can just pour out your heart, and I'm just going to be here. It's really about showing up. And I think that it sounds so simple, but it's also so powerful, and it's a little easier said than done, because as humans, we want to fix, and it's really uncomfortable for us to see someone in pain. So what happens is that we feel so uncomfortable in seeing someone in pain, we try to fix it. But what that's doing is really caring for our own needs. It's trying to get us out of discomfort. Mm-hmm. So just put that aside, and it's okay to be uncomfortable. It's okay to tell someone, oh my gosh, like, I don't even know what to say. Like, this is so painful, and really just focus on the person instead of focusing on how it makes you feel, because it's not about that.
Okay, thank you. There's a lot of beautiful messages, and you've really inspired a lot of people. So I hope you're reading through the... I'm
going to try to read through it.
I'm just going to read the questions, but everyone can, welcome to share your feelings, and Rebbetzin and Chavi will read them. So someone asked, do you have any specific affirmations or saying you tell yourself to help you get through hard times?
I do, actually. One of the things that I've learned to do is to go to my own therapy and take care of my own emotional needs. And one of the favorite things that my therapist has taught me is, it's good enough. Like, you're good enough. Like, you are good enough. And one of my favorite quotes is, at any given moment, we are doing the best we can, and we can do better. So those two things can coexist. As parents, we're always doing the best we can. There's never a moment where we're maliciously trying to destroy our kids, right? Like, we don't do that on purpose. It happens accidentally, but we don't do it on purpose. So you have to remember that we're doing the best we can. Of course, there's always more to learn, and we can always do better, and we can challenge ourselves and grow. We always want to grow. But you also have to remember that we're doing the best we can, and we're good enough. Like, that's it. We're good enough just the way we are. So I do tell myself that a lot. Sometimes I believe it, sometimes I don't, but at least I tell it to myself.
Oops, sorry. The next question, on those days that are particularly challenging and you're not able to get a break, how do you get through and keep your sanity?
Who says you keep your sanity? No, like, you don't. Sometimes you don't keep your sanity, and sometimes you fall apart, and sometimes you just lose it, right? Like, we're not perfect human beings. Like, we lose it, right? And also, I've learned over the years, like, you know what? It's actually okay, because then our kids can see that we're not perfect. Our kids can see, oh, mom and dad have a breaking point. Like, if I go this far, they're gonna crack, you know? So it's actually healthy and important for kids to see that we can't handle it all, and we are human. And it's also, I wish I can tell you, like, oh my gosh, like, I never lose it, and I'm always figuring it out, and I'm always using all the coping skills that I know. No, some days you just lose it, and you're not sane, and you are crazy, and hopefully every day starts new and fresh, and you can start again. That's my answer to you. Like, we're going to lose it. It's going to happen.
That's a very honest answer. Thank you.
You're not going to get, like, BS.
No, this is amazing.
I'm going to tell you what my
people want to hear honesty. If anyone has, there's no more questions here. If anyone has any other questions that they'd like to ask. Anyone? Okay. Well, then, in that case, I guess we will thank you very, very much. I know I have really been inspired by what you have to share. And, you know, I'm sure like a lot of people here can take everyone's lives are different, and different things are thrown at different people's lives, but there's so much inspiration in the words that you've said and how you've dealt with your journey and the roller coasters, the ups and the downs. I'm sure we can all take some messages,
yeah.
And just your faith in God is just so inspirational, and I'm sure that inspiration is spreading through Raleigh and Cary right now.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It was such a pleasure. You all seem like such lovely people. I wish I can be with you in person, but one day that will happen again, and where we can all be in the same room without masks, enjoying each other's company. But till then, it was a pleasure to be here with you, and I wish you so much beauty and success and strength in the future.
Thank you, Chavi. Thank you so much. Thank you all for joining.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Good night. Take care.
Bye-bye.